have been lied to on so many levels. The last organic study was done in 1992. Organic foods yield 100 times more nutrients than conventional foods. When you go to the eye professional, they give you thicker and thicker glasses. And when you go to Google, it says that your eyesight cannot regenerate. But with Pro Powder, we had people regenerating their eyesight. I even had a lady, she had eczema. They were so bad. After 30 days, her hands were healed. She started crying. Now they call it the Spanish flu because there was propaganda, but it actually originated in Kansas in a military base. I lived in a building that had towers in the wall. 3 people passed away in my building in 6 months.
Wow. Hi, I'm Chris James, and you're watching The Healthy Alternative. Today we have a very special guest. I am so excited to have Matt from Cultivate Elevate with us today. We're going to be diving a little bit into his history, just who he is, where he came from, and then we're going to get right into the juicy stuff. We're going to be talking about all sorts of different topics. I'm assuming we're getting into health and wellness, maybe a little ancient technology. You know, we're going to see where the wind blows us. I'm really excited to have you. So if you guys are interested in seeing this incredible interview, it's coming up next. All right, Matt, thank you for joining me, man. I really, you're probably one of my favorite researchers. Even though I just found your page and your information, I could tell by the depth of your information and you know, the books. I've probably purchased like 3 or 4 books that you've suggested already. So thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for having me on. And I'm happy that you're doing that because the books tell a different story. You know, we've been sold so much nonsense for the last 100 years, you know, since the Rockefellers took over the educational system back in about the 1900s. But, you know, because of that, we have been told a very different story. So those books and a lot of the ones in which we recommend and we talk about and all these different things, these books really change the way we think about things. And they show the other side in which we're not taught. And that's why I'm really big on certain books, because they show me a different side and go, wait a minute, what? I never learned about that side. And once you see that side, you can't see the same nonsense over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. It's like your eyes. What's that movie? They Are Among Us or something like that, right? You get the glasses and you can see all the propaganda and everything. Yeah, once that happens, yeah, it's like you're tuned into it. And so I see it everywhere. You know what I mean? A lot of the entertainment and things that we take for granted, sports and, you know, TV shows, it's all to just keep us docile and you know what I mean, just busy with something else while there's a bigger picture going on behind the scenes. Now, before we get into this, I did want to just take a small moment to get to know you a little bit. I do want to introduce you to my audience. I think that you're an invaluable resource. So I want people to be tuning into your platform. So can you just tell us a little bit about, you know, who you are, have you always been a truth seeker? Like, just give us a little bit of background.
So I've always been into seeing the opposite side. That's for sure. I always went against the grain. Even when I was in school, I always went against the grain. I got in trouble for talking too much, which is funny. So we're going to do a lot of talking today. But I got in trouble for talking too much and then not listening and not staying in line. And it was interesting because my first ever experience of this was like 3rd grade. I was really good at math, like phenomenal at math, like very quick, super fast. And when I would go in these like competitions, they would always say, you're doing too much and you need to be like a referee for the competition instead of actually being like in the competition. And I thought, this is weird. You know, like if somebody's good at something, you should help them. That's what I've learned. Like that, if someone's good at it, boost them up. But during that time, I didn't understand that. And then as I fast forwarded into my like 20s and into my 30s, I started having all these health problems, all kinds of health problems. And every time I would go to seek a health professional, you know, they'd always tell me it's genetic, I'm getting older, you know, the same story. They just say it's your genes and you're getting older. And I started to realize that there was lots of flaws in this because the health professionals were never telling me to like eat healthy. They were never like, well, what are you eating today? You know, what foods are you bringing in your body? Are you working out? Are you going outside? You know, what skincare stuff or soap are you using? You know, none of these things. They just said genetics and getting older. And at this time, I was like 25 years old or 26. So it's sitting there going, you're getting older. You're at your youth. Like you're as healthy as a kid. So it doesn't make any sense. So that kind of broke the spells. And then throughout into the fitness world, I was in the fitness world for a while. I broke into a lot of things related to like the Federal Reserve and money and how things didn't make a lot of sense with that. And then as I transitioned into just pretty much just health, that's what I do now with Cultivate Elevate. I started to see even more things and just kind of now just look for the other side.
Mm.
And what I notice is we have been lied to on so many levels, like anything you can think of. That just always there's a flip side. And as I would learn the flip side, it made sense why we were lied to so much. They're trying to ingrain this nonsense into our minds so that we don't see how we could heal for practically nothing, and that we are self-regenerating beings. And it was interesting because through this journey, we've had a lot of things with like the pearl powder, like we talked about in the beginning, and dragon's blood and things like that. But with pearl powder, we had people regenerating their eyesight. And
Mm.
it's interesting because when you go to the eye professional, they give you thicker and thicker glasses, which act like a crutch, and they never address the root cause. And when you go to Google, it says that your eyesight cannot regenerate. So all these things, I started to realize that we've been lied to be put in a lower vibration or a lower frequency so that we are dependent on a system which is just making billions of dollars on us. So through this whole journey, I've gone through every avenue I can possibly think of. When I find something, I'm like, like a bloodhound going through the information. And then once I'm onto that, I'm going to the next one. And then and then connecting the dots. And I started to notice that things maybe I learned in, I don't know, 2012 or 2016, connect the dots with stuff I learned in 2021, and then connect the dots to 2024. And that's how we're supposed to be learning. But while we're in this educational system, which is, owned by the Rockefellers and the Peabodys and the bankers, who are owning the system, you're just reciting things. You're not kind of analyzing through the information and going, maybe that's not correct. And so through this whole journey, it's made me question anything. Anything someone tells me, I always look it up and I research it, and I try to go back before 1920s. Because when you look at information before the 1920s, you actually see the other side. After the 1920s and all these World War resets, you see the new side that they try to tell you, which is interesting because when you think of like New World Order, it's because they're teaching you something new now, and they're removing the old world from your brain and from our past.
So many things already that I have to follow up on. So, geez, I got to talk about the eyesight because clearly, but the whole old world, man, and like it's so fascinating. So I'm a huge fan of ancient technology. So I started learning about ancient technology probably back in 2012, and then you really, I noticed you really dive deep into the old world, world fairs and things of that nature, the technology. And so basically, I tell people the technology we have today is nothing compared to what we had just 100, 200 years ago. And that's like, people can't really understand that. So I'll make that comment, but I do want to talk about the regeneration of eyesight, what your experience has been with that, and because I have myopia, and I have found ways to reverse myopia, but the problem is it's very slow, and it's a lot. It takes a lot of energy and effort that I haven't really been willing to put into it. So, what has been your experience using pearl powder for regenerating the eyes?
So it's been pretty remarkable. The first ever study done on pearl powder was done on people who had cataracts. And this lady, she demonstrated that when she gave her patients pearl powder and had them rub pearl powder around the eyelids and use it just topically and internally, she had 100 patients, 60 to 70% of their cataracts completely reversed within 2 months.
Wow.
So when I started to think about that, I started to think, wait a minute, in my family, everybody's got glasses. Everybody's eyes get progressively worse. And then I thought, wait, what if I've been lied to? Like, what if your eyesight could get better? So then through the course of this last year, we've had tons of people, they put their reviews and their testimonials up on our website, where they've gone from like +6 to +4. They've gone from -3 to -2. I had people who they had readers. They're like, I always had to use my readers. I don't use readers anymore. I've just used the pearl. We have people doing eye exercises, training your eyes, because the biggest issue sometimes, like what you were saying with pressure or the imbalance that develops with the eye, is that the eye is it's only going straight forward. Every time you look at our screens and they only scroll up and down, which is interesting, that's the same movement all the time. You're never looking to the right and you're never looking to the left, and you're not moving in a circle. Your eyes are meant to move. So what happens is people will develop an imbalance in the eye because they're not moving the eyes in all the directions and all the different circles. So eye exercises can be very helpful. You can do things with getting rid of LED lights. LED lights ping radio frequencies and a very strong blue light, which messes with the eyes. So you can switch back to incandescents or halogens. That's a really good one as well. And then you can use a little bit of castor oil and pearl powder around the eyes. That'll help pull the toxins out and also help hydrate the eyes. The eyes require 25% of the nutrition for the day. So
Wow.
25% of whatever you consume is going just towards your eyes. The other 50% goes for your brain, and the rest of it goes for your body. So when you think about all these altered light spectrums and kind of everything that we face as a whole, with everything that we face, you start to sit there and think we're missing things and we're not feeding the eyes, and we're not understanding that our eyes require structured water. And it's interesting because if you take pearl powder and you put it in water, you'll see that it floats on top. It almost is like ormus or mana, if you want to look into that. That's a fun one. But it basically floats, and it floats because it's defying gravity, and it's a monatomic structured material. That's the water in it is structured. So when you get into this, you start to understand that the eyes need structured water. And all of these frequencies and all this nonsense they keep trying to sell people, it's cooking the water in the eyes. So the eyes get weaker over time. So what we're doing is we're bringing the nutrients back into the eyes, into the body, so that they can repair and regenerate. And this is why when you go to an eye professional, they tell you you just need thicker and thicker glasses, because the glasses are acting like a crutch and you're never addressing the root cause, which is not using it and then you lose it, or not feeding it and then it loses the minerals and then it begins to fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the structured water. It's water. When I was on my journey, learning about water was probably like primary. And that opened up my eyes to a lot of things. It blew my mind when I really started to understand water, and that like the water that's here today is the same water that was here 1,000 years ago. Like we're in this enclosed environment and the water just rejuvenates itself. And then I learned about, imprinting on water, looking at Dr. Emoto's work and, the structuring of water. And even recently, I think I've seen on TikTok or even Instagram where somebody they'll take an apple or something and they'll put it in contact with water, and then they'll take a drop of that water and they'll like flash freeze it and it'll show you the apple. It's just incredible. Water is way more than what we're taught, right? That's like one of the big scams. They want to make sure we don't understand water. So basically with the pearl powder, we don't put the pearl powder in your eye. You just put it around the eyelids or, around the eye, and then maybe with some castor oil and let it kind of absorb into the eye. And that's how you use it.
Yep. And then you can also eat it. You can put it in your oatmeal, or you can put it in a smoothie. And the person that you referred to is Veda Austin. She has all this beautiful work of imprinting things into water. And she even took like a picture of a baby and put it next to the water, flash froze it, and you see the picture of the baby in the water.
Wow.
So then if you think of your body, which is 80 to 85% water, everything that's around you is imprinting on you. So anything you put your water in, anything that you drink out of, anything that you eat out of, this is why DuPont and all the plastic, we know all about this, but all the plastic that is pushed onto the people is changing the imprint of water. So you get into this and you see that there's a malicious agenda behind a lot of this, but there's also ways to counter it, and it's super easy. That's what I've started to realize. All these things are very easy, but we've been told it's so complicated and everything else. I've realized we're simple beings. We're beautiful water crystals, and then we're made out of quartz and all these different materials and gold and copper and silver and things. And once we bring it back, we heal like that.
Right. And I think that's the reason why there's so much manipulation, because it is so easy to reverse once you understand the simplicity of it. So it's kind of like you really have to go through these lengths to really get us to where we are today, because otherwise, we would have figured it out. I'm sure our ancestors, there's been times in history when we figured it out and they've kind of had to rework their strategy. But when you think about like the amount of plastic that we use today versus, once again, just a couple hundred years ago, it's like plastic is in everything. And you have to think why, because it doesn't make sense. It's not better for the environment. It's not better for your health. They want to make it seem like, oh, it's easier to manufacture and it's easier, but it's not. Like everything's just a lie. And then when I found out that Rockefeller had tricked everybody into thinking that oil was a fossil fuel, I started putting pieces to the puzzle together. I'm like, all of this stuff is made out of this oil, this fuel that they say is, rare or limited, but we use it for everything, even the medications. So it's interesting. So would you say that, because like I think you said that you really focus a lot on like health and wellness right now. Have you ever come across a dis-ease or a ailment or anything that you were like, this, there's nothing we could probably do about this? Or do you believe that the body can completely restore itself?
I mean, I don't think that we can't restore ourselves. I think everything's healable. Even diabetes type 1, there's a great book called The Invisible Rainbow that everybody should check out. But diabetes type 1 is caused by the over-electrification of the pancreas. So how do you get rid of electricity from your body? You do a lot of barefoot grounding. And it was interesting because I had a fellow who reached out. He goes, I started doing barefoot grounding boxing. That's all he does. He goes, I do it every day. I've been doing it for 30 to 45 minutes a day. And he goes, my blood sugar is completely balanced. And I'm kind of blown away because he goes, the professionals told me with diabetes type 1, like I'm going to be this for the rest of my life. And he fixed it. And that's one person. I can get into eyesight. I could get into lung issues, kidney, pancreas. Everything can be regenerated it can regenerate. But if you don't understand how the body works and all the meridian lines, and how everything runs down a line through your teeth, through your neck, into your eyes, this whole thing, then you can't figure out what the problem is because everything's all cloudy. And this is why, like, perfect example, they're always pulling teeth out of people's mouths. Like, this is a great one. All your teeth are meridian lines. They all connect to the liver, the spleen, the pancreas, all these organs. So if you remove things or impact that meridian line, now you impact the rest of the pathway. So you can't address the root cause because you didn't address your mouth. So, you get into all these things, and I started to realize that everything can be, anything can heal. It's just a frequency that's put on us to put us in a spell to make us believe that we can't heal. And that's controlling people. It's bringing them down. So they're like, oh, the professional says it's genetic. It's like, yeah, but your food, your water, your terrain is determining your whole body rather than your genes. Because if it was your genes, we all would be gone long ago. So, I've started to learn that the body can heal. And it's just the stories I've seen. I even had a lady, she had eczema for 5 to 8 years on her hands. They were so bad. And she couldn't even play with her kids, like, because of this eczema. She tried dragon's blood. After 30 days, her hands were healed. She started crying because she's like, I can't believe it. I have no idea how this works. Dragon's blood is just tree sap. That's what it is. But when you feed the skin can heal. And that's what I started to realize. We focus on foods, and we see them, and we're like, oh, that's an apple and orange and everything. But we don't understand what it's feeding. Once we understand what it's feeding, we can address what we're missing and which organ pathway or meridian pathway needs to be healed. And then once we turn that back on, it's like a supercharge because everything else turns back on at the same time.
I have seen this healing, and these are, it's easy to like not see this because it happens. It's such a small thing. But when I very first got into essential oils, I started using lavender on bug bites, mosquito bites, whatever the case may be. I'm talking about, I could probably sit there and watch the bump go down, right? I could watch the body heal. And we often look at healing as this long drawn out process because we're utilizing a flawed system, right? We're using Rockefeller's system. So it is designed to be flawed. You never really properly heal, and So then, of course, you have issues forever, which makes sense because you become this customer that's constantly coming back in for service. But the body can do the instantaneous healing as well, which I found out through researching the placebo and the nocebo effect, just seeing how quickly the body can heal, and then even certain things you could do, whether because I know belief, certain levels of healing, belief is huge, which is like the placebo effect and nocebo effect is like, do you believe it? It'll happen. But then there's other things that just happen just because you have the right frequency. I know when I learned about Rife and his Rife machine and that technology, it's like we are battling the big C, cancer, and it's that technology and that thing has been dealt with so long ago. I actually just put up a short, just talking about how like they know how to reverse these diseases, but it's not within their doctrine. Like it's not a part of their new world order, as you mentioned. uh, Injections by murder.
And then this is the
Murder by
book that
injection.
goes over every single thing that you just said that relates, because the industry, like you said, is owned by the Rockefellers, and they raise billions of dollars, but they don't come out with a solution.
Right.
And in this book, they talked about how in the 1960s, and this is nuts, 1960s to 1975, they raided grandma's houses with SWAT teams over selling natural remedies.
Mm.
I mean, you sit there and think this is the system. It's made so much money and it's harming people, like you just said. And you sit there and go, well, this maybe we need to do something different. Maybe we need to go back to the druids, the shamans, the witches, how they were burning the witches and that whole thing. Maybe
Hmm.
we need to go back to connecting to the Mother Earth like we were doing, and we would heal without, like you said, any side effects. And I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to put that in there because you're on the topic.
No, you're right on it, and hey, we can get more into that as well. Um, for the dragon's blood, because I just want to, you know, I want to make sure that people are not only just hearing this. I want them to understand like how to use it and all this stuff. So, with the dragon's blood for the lady who had eczema, how do you apply it? Is it a serum? Is it a powder? How does it come, and how do you use it?
So we have it in capsule form, and you can open up the capsules and put it together with maybe a little shea butter, mango butter, coconut oil, whatever you would like to put it. And then you can just place it topically on the area. And then also, because it's in capsule form, you can take 1 to 2 capsules per day. Nice and simple. And
Good.
it's just, as you were asking, it's just tree sap. That's what you're using. Kind of like if you guys remember turpentine. Turpentine
Hmm.
used to be real popular with all the pine trees, especially in the South. And then it's kind of, they changed the name. They called it a cleaning product instead, and whatever, which is interesting. But it's kind of like that. It's a beautiful, powerful tree sap, and when you place that on the skin, it starts to help regenerate that skin and bring it back. And dragon's blood contains the highest auric value on the planet. It's the antioxidant value. It's
Mm.
3 million. So you think of things like blueberries, 10,000, chaga mushroom, 50,000, dragon's blood, 3 million. And in Southern America, they used to actually place it on wounds because they didn't have, Rockefeller Band-Aids and all the other nonsense they sold people. So they just took a little tree sap, placed it on the wound, and it would heal like that, because nature will give you the beautiful things to heal rather than making you, suffer for a long period of time.
It's so I asked that question about, where were you at as far as like what are the limitations of the body's ability to heal, right? And for a long time, because I'm not against doctors, meaning I understand that individuals want to help other individuals and they go into the medical field, right? So, and I understand trauma care, you know, and for a long time I didn't understand. I was like, what did our ancestors use for broken bones and like trauma? And so one of the things I just recently learned, was to use comfrey leaves as a poultice to mend bone or ligaments or tendons and things of that nature. So now you've just added another kind of tool in the tool belt, being able to use the sap from the dragon's blood to just heal as a band-aid or whatever the case may be. Have you heard about the comfrey leaf?
Which is funny because if you think of comfy, like how that word is kind of like soothing you or
Mm-hmm.
like making it comfortable for you. But yes, I have. It's a very powerful healing herb. And that's the thing. Nature gives you everything. Nature always gave people everything. And the more we're connected back to that, the faster we begin to heal. I mean, I spend time in nature every day. I work out outside every day. I'm connected. I see the bees and the hummingbirds and all the beautiful things that are around. We're meant to be in that. And nature, if you're feeling under the weather, will give you something. Like
Mm-hmm.
dandelions. Dandelions heal all the time. They clean out the liver. You can use enemas, everything. But it's cleansing out the system, and they're all over. But we've been programmed to believe that these things come secondary and then this system is first. And what I started to realize is when you go back into even books like this we were talking about, is everything of nature used to be first. But then we've just been convinced the other way around. Now, like you said, if you were hurt and you needed to get your arm put back together, I don't know. I can't do much. I might put it there, but I don't know if it's going to stay. But for just simple things like you're feeling under the weather, you could have some chamomile tea. Like it's that simple, and that's where I think we have to start to understand that we do have a system for if you were, missing something, they can put it back. But the entire system of the other part of our own health is up to us. And that's what I started to realize because when I'm going to somebody, I'm almost like expecting them to take care of me. But
Mm-hmm.
in reality, I'm not taking care of myself. And that's through my health journey, I started to learn that it was up to me. If I eat something and I had a reaction, that might mean that my body it just doesn't work for me. Or maybe there's pesticides or there's a poison or something. And I just need to not use it. Or maybe it's not the right season. Or maybe it's my blood type. You can extrapolate these things to so many different ways. But if we just look at it like one, dimension, then we're missing the whole, umbrella of things as you've talked about before.
Mm-hmm. So when you mentioned like dandelions, right? You've got all of these weeds that grow in your yard and they're very persistent. You literally can't get rid of them. Like you could pour concrete over them. They'll find a crack in the concrete. You can spray them with pesticides. They're back next season or just in a few months. Like you can't get rid of them, and they're marketed as pests. But in actuality, it's because they are tied to the fabric of our nature. It's designed to be there to help support us, whether we need to detox, whether we need to soothe ourselves, help ourselves sleep, et cetera, et cetera. And then that also kind of brings me to another thing I realized was when you go down the road, you see all of these trees, but none of them have fruit. None of them have anything to consume on there. And I wondered, is that done on purpose? How is it that with all the abundance in nature, especially around our cities, there's no fruit trees, there's no nut trees? Has it always been that way? Is that something that you've observed?
So before the Great Depression, which was orchestrated by bankers, there was abundance all over the place. After the Great Depression, they said abundance is a burden, which is interesting. That was the terminology from the president.
Wow.
So as the time passed and that became a burden, then they started using commodities where they would change the prices of things and say this is how much they cost. Then we fast forward in time to about the 1950s, 1960s, and we see that they start planting all the pollen trees, which were the male trees, and removing all the female trees, which had the fruit. So when you ask, it's interesting. You go around the land and there's no food just hanging from the tree. You start to see that, yes, they planted selected trees to remove the ability for you to forage
Mm.
and then only put the ones that don't have the fruit. And what does that make you do? It makes you dependent on a grocery store, which who knows what's in there. You got Bill Gates and all kinds of weird stuff. And then it also, makes you disconnected from growing your own food because you kind of feel, well, if I grow it, maybe it's not going to, do this and whatever else because you're getting it instantaneously. So, like you said, we've been programmed through these things, and even the dandelions. You go to the hardware store, and it's like, war on this and war on that and war on bugs and ants, like things that are part of nature. And I've started to learn because I went through the electroculture journey, which is
Mm.
growing food using copper and enhancing the energy and that whole thing. And the ants or all of these things are there to balance everything. Because, like you just said, nature has all kinds of things. There's not just one dandelion. There's like dandelions, cloves, all these things. So if you remove one, you remove all the others, because then they can't work together in synergy. So our bodies are the same way. If we're only eating apples every single day, we are only getting the nutrients of apples, but we also need more. There's a lot more to it. But through this whole thing, yes, it's been a learning process of understanding how you can't just walk outside and there's food. Because if that's the case, people would then have access to something. Now, here in Arizona, there's still a lot of orange and lemon trees all over the place. They still are around, but a lot of them have all been chopped down. Arizona used to be the citrus place of the whole United States. They grew more oranges, lemons, limes, all these things in Arizona. But they changed that. They changed the terrain. And then now, there's a lot of sand and sun. That's pretty much what it is. But, you see how these changes took place. And if you don't know history or the stories, because whoever creates the story, if you don't understand it, you don't see how things have changed and kind of why we got here. And that's why I'm always adamant about going back in time and looking at something I was told, okay, these cities vanished in 1902. Okay. And my family members were from them. Well, why did they vanish? And then you start looking at these stories and going, wait a minute, there was a hurricane, a flood, and a fire in the same year? It starts to make you wonder, like, wait a minute, maybe this doesn't make a lot of sense. So if we look at how the earth has changed over time, there's a lot that has changed, like peanuts, for example. I've gone down this whole peanut rabbit hole about how peanuts are good for the body, peanuts are healthy. You look up George Washington Carver, who used to make all these inventions out of peanuts and everything you can think of out of peanuts, and how peanuts boost testosterone. They help with healing the body, all these beautiful things. And what are people suffering from? Low testosterone, hormonal imbalances. What are they eating instead? Lots of almonds and no peanuts. And it's interesting because peanuts clean up the soil. So you start to see, if you take away something that's just a staple food for everybody in a certain area, now all of a sudden they don't have that anymore. And then they might start to develop an issue that they never had because they don't have their staple foods anymore. And I've been going on the whole peanut butter rabbit hole because I've been eating jars of it now, because I've gone back into how I used to feel at 20 years old. I ate lots of peanut butter, and through 20 to 30, I just kind of stopped because you can't find it at the store or you can't find it anywhere. And I realized, I was like, this is kind of odd. And then you think of how they put peanut stuff into some of the, the pokes that they gave the people and everything else. And you start to see that people developed an allergy. So then you start to go, oh, okay, now I get it. You make the people allergic so that they can't eat the food and turn peanut oil into fuel. Because the first diesel engine ran on peanut oil. So then you start to sit there and go, now it kind of makes sense. You are getting people away from something that can give them freedom or independence and making them dependent on a system which is not helping them.
That is a major problem. If we were able to grow our own peanuts, extract the oil, and then put it in our tank to drive, that's a problem. Along with being able to put water in your tank, right? But so with the peanuts, I did always wonder. So like when I started researching the, stabs, I was like, man, why is there all this random stuff in there, right? Peanuts, just random stuff. And I never even considered the greater agenda, which might be that it would deter us from interacting with whatever it was, right? Because now we're allergic to it. And of course, there's a lot of information that says that peanuts are bad. Now, obviously, when you talk about peanut butter, you're not talking about Jiffy.
You got it. Organic Azure peanut butter. Yes, they grow the farm. Or I said they grow the peanuts. They're all about it. They're organic. They're not sprayed with pesticides. They're the real deal. And that's a key point right there. But yes, not the processed stuff. And the studies, like you just said, they come from processed things. So It's like, well, of course it's poisonous for you because the pesticides and the chemicals and all these things. But you don't do a study with organic foods. And I think this is an important one for everybody to know, that the last organic study was done in 1992. That was the last one. It showed
Wow.
that organic foods yield 100 times more nutrients than conventional foods.
Hmm.
And that's why the study stopped. Because if people are aware of what they're purchasing and they're consenting to, then they can see something and go, wait a minute, why don't I just buy that then? You know, like why am I buying this? And that's through my health journey, switching to all organic and understanding and getting this and trying to see and go, this makes sense. And then the studies stop. And like
Mm.
you said, when you talk about peanut butter, it goes into the mold and the aflatoxins. Well, if a person has had an injection and then now now he or she is having an allergic reaction, they blame it on the peanuts, but they're not seeing the root cause.
Mm.
And this is how we get this. It's like a bait and switch where you don't know what's causing it because you were young. They get you before you're 18. You have no idea and everything else. And that's why this awareness is so important, because if you don't know, it impacts the generation after generation. And then they call it genetic. And when in
Right.
reality, everybody's just doing the same thing in the same house, and it just keeps repeating. You know,
There
that's
you
what
go.
it is.
There you go. That man, I love it. I love it. See, I knew. I mean, we're on the same page. It's so man, I should have got myself a little notepad because like you mentioned so many things and I'm like, "Oh, I want to talk about that." So, one of the things that the medical profession they boast about, because I personally don't believe that they have the ability to like aid, like reverse or heal anything. But one of the things that they point to are the pokes. You know, we talk about polio, the measles, mumps, you know, that sort of thing, and they will give credit to the pokes for like ending that. What has been your what's your opinion about that? Do you think that they were able to use this technology to actually resolve these diseases, or do you think it's a bait and switch or something else going on?
Well, the first one you mentioned, the polio one, was stopped because it was actually causing the illness. Every single place in which they would introduce that, people started becoming paralyzed and having all kinds of issues.
Mm.
And then the other ones that you mentioned were just cleaned up with sanitation and hygiene. You know, if you look at the chart of sanitation and hygiene in the 1900s, this is another fascinating thing. You got these old world buildings and there's no toilets, and people are throwing, you know, their waste in the street, which makes absolutely no sense. So that's a whole rabbit
Mhm.
hole in its sense.
Okay.
But there's no sanitation, there's no running water, there's no piping. You know, it doesn't make. So were they breathing the ether or eating the sun? There's something that's really missing from that. But through the 1900s to the 1950s, you know, you see sanitation comes around and people start going, oh, if I just clean up this water and I don't have this poisonous water, I'm not going to get, you know, yellow fever anymore. Like it's gone. And then same with, you know, you get into the measles, the mumps, and all these things. It's just your body detoxing. Same with chicken pox. Chicken pox is just your body trying to detox or expel. And you get wounds because your skin is the largest detox pathway, and it's trying to expel these toxins through your skin. And then what do? They give you a bath, you know, and like tomato juice or whatever they do, you know, put you in a little bathtub and try to heal the skin with vitamin A and whatever. And then they try to get the people together, the kids together, so that their whole body sends a frequency to the other kids to detox and purge. So you start to see that there has never been an illness actually prevented by these, you know, jabs and pokes. It actually is quite the opposite. And
Mm.
there's a great post I put up. It was from 1885. And they said, if you jab people, there's big money in it. And it shows a picture. It's from 1885. They realized that every single person that they would put these jabs into, they would start to develop the big C. They would get the big cancer. And professionals at that time, and that's kind of what this book goes a little bit into. This book goes into a lot, but Eustace Mullins is a phenomenal author, and he goes into a lot of things. But with that, he explained with all these professionals who they fired, because this is how it always goes. They're always fired
Mhm.
after they, you know, have a breakthrough. But every single child who would get the jabs would develop cancer. And they
Mm.
started to see this back and forth and go, wait a minute. And he said, all the kids I'm seeing without it are not developing these issues. And that's the part where if we start to look at the other side, the people who aren't doing it, or the control, like the Amish, for example, they don't do any of it. And you see
Yep.
that they don't have the same illnesses, then you have to start to wonder, well, what is different? And there's only kind of, a few variables. Number one, they don't pay taxes, which is amazing. But, the second part is, that they're not getting the jabs. So, you start to sit there and you see these things and go, okay, and when you look at, if you go back in time, and that's why I say, go back in time, look at these different things. And polio, which was a really big one, that they really convinced the people to say that that was the savior. But it's interesting because all the professionals who testified in front of Congress were saying that as soon as they stopped the jabs and they stopped the DDT, all of a sudden kids started getting better. And there was one more professional who said that sugary drinks were leading to polio. And this is an interesting one because we don't hear that story because that's part of fast food and processed food. So that story kind of got, put under, but he noticed that he was noticing all these kids drinking these like sugary fizzy drinks, they were starting to develop symptoms. So if you start to see what people are consuming, getting put in their body, drinking, all these things, you start to see that if we just clean that up, all of a sudden all the illness goes away. But they tell us like 2020, after you get like 75 of them, that you're going to be safe, and that's the thing is we've been duped, just straight up duped. Like there's no other way. And back in about the 1890s, people were dying suddenly, that whole thing. They were dying suddenly. All of a sudden, after the professionals would see them, they'd get their, the poke, and all of a sudden they would drop. So you see that, and this is why I like to look into the past, because you see the same playbook. And that's what it is. If you don't know the playbook, you go with it. If you know the playbook, you're like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Because we have been programmed a certain way to just sometimes believe things at face value. And if a person wants to look into another one, you can look into the Tuskegee experiment. When the U.S. Department of Health changed its name to the CDC, that's actually why they changed their name, because they did such things. So you can look at all these things and go, I don't think the track record does not look what it's showing me over here on this side, and this is, if you follow the money and you see all the money that's made up from the side effects, you begin to see why this is happening.
100%. You reminded me of another, maybe in what, like the 80s or so, there was a disease that was very popular going around that was also being caused by the medication that people were taking to reverse or to aid the disease, something called AIDS.
Yep.
They literally did the same thing. Because like I was trying to figure out how was it that this disease was staying in certain communities, or how was it choosing its victims? Like everybody's having relations. How is it staying just in a particular group? And then I stumbled upon some information that told me that, well, because if you go into the doctor's office, it's like we both have pneumonia. So we have these symptoms that are pneumonia, but one gets diagnosed with pneumonia, the other one gets diagnosed with AIDS. They start taking the medication, they start developing the disease, and then of course they become a statistic.
Yep. And that's the whole, AIDS and HIV of 1980s. That's the whole thing. AZT. They were giving people AZT the whole time, and they would start to develop the symptoms that they were describing on the television. And then people were like, oh my God, I got the illness. It's like, yeah, because you've taken what you just said. And it was wild because a fellow put up 80 grand, and he got arrested for this, but he put up $80,000 in 1983 or 1984 to prove that AIDS was real and the whole HIV thing was real. They arrested him, and nobody won the money. So you start to sit there and think, okay, people are putting up money. Same with polio. People are putting up money and saying, show me that it's real. Show me the documents. They can't show it, but they keep promoting it on television. And they put people into fear, like you just said, to keep them in this cycle. Because like you said, how is it only in a selected area? It's only in this one. It's not going anywhere. It's not going by car or anything else. It's not going anywhere. It's just in one spot. And those are the
Yeah.
areas in which they would give, for example, that pill to those people. And then all of a sudden they
Hmm.
would develop those symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because you had mentioned something that happened in 2020. You know, the whole world kind of got shut down, and there was kind of a poster child of that whole thing, a guy by the name of Fauci. And if I'm not mistaken, Fauci was also involved in that whole HIV/AIDS thing, if I remember correctly. Um, so he's kind of been involved in quite a few pretty notorious things, and to this very day. Now, I don't know what's going on with him recently. I thought maybe he was potentially getting charged with something, but I don't actually know. I don't know if you're familiar like with what's going on with him, but as we kind of move forward and we talk more about like what was happening most recently, the mandates and the illnesses and everything that's going on. So someone who studies the past, does this look like the same playbook? Like, are they just repeating it all over again?
So it's the same playbook as 1919, the Kansas flu. Now they call it the Spanish flu because there was propaganda, but it actually originated in Kansas. It originated in a military base. And it originated in a place in which the people were getting the pokes and that whole thing. And then it also originated in a place in which the radio rolled out. So same thing like 2020, where we're sitting there going, only selected areas are being impacted. They're losing their sense of smell. They're losing their sense of taste. They're getting dizzy. They're getting hair loss. They're having all of these ringing of the ears. They're having all of those symptoms. Those are symptoms of radio wave sickness. Now it's interesting. After the 1920s, radio wave sickness was taken off the books. It was called influenza, autoimmune, chronic fatigue, all these other names. And why?
Wow.
Because when you get a phone, it's got a radio. That's what it's got. Your phone's got a radio, the Wi-Fi's got a radio, your routers, all of these things. And during 2020, while people were locked up in their houses and doing whatever they were doing, there were people out putting up towers, and you can see them all over the place in schools and places of this, especially, number one, nursing homes and hospitals. And where were the most people affected? In nursing homes and hospitals. They couldn't breathe because radio waves impact the lungs. But you see the exact same playbook as 1919 Kansas flu as 2020. And then they start telling people that they need to put on masks and all this stuff. The only difference in 1919 is they told people to eat oranges. They actually gave people 3 oranges a day because they understood that oranges are beneficial. Now, 2020, they tell you to eat McDonald's. It's like it doesn't even make any sense. But that's because these companies have bought into what you should be recommended. That's what happens. But same playbook, same everything. They were arresting people in 1919 for not wearing a mask. They put people in jail if they didn't take the jabs. That was a big one. So so people are aware the 1900s to the 1940s, you actually had the most resistance. You had the resistance to this whole system. You had the resistance to taxes. You had the resistance to GMOs and all these things. And during the 1900s to the 1940s up to the 50s, they were going against and trying to get rid of all those people. That's why all the wars happened. And that's also why this 1919 Kansas flu thing happened. Because they were trying to get rid of the strong people who said, you're not putting that in my child. You're not putting these things into my kid. So they said, arrest them. And that's how these things have started. And then they go town to town and say, well, you guys are getting arrested. And there's only so many people to defend, but it's crazy when you look at this whole thing. And there's 2 books on this, so people can really understand it. You can look up The Contagion Myth by Dr. Tom Cowan. It's a phenomenal book. So you can understand of how everything that you eat, you drink, and you basically your terrain dictates your health. And then the other book is The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Fistenberg. And that book will just explain it all. And it's interesting because when we look at all of these illnesses, like me and you have kind of talked about today, they just keep going up. They're not going down. So our
Right.
system, if you look at it, just keeps rising. It's not going down. Now, what's interesting is since the rollout of the cell phone, the only one to go down is brain cancer. And I wonder why they don't want to show that one of how high it's actually gone up. So you
Mm.
sit there and go, okay, so all these people are having tumors in their head and all kinds of things, but you don't classify that as what the illness is. So, people put a cell phone up to their ear and they develop a tumor right here and a growth and things like that. But, you see all of this and go, okay, I get it. You're trying to skew the data. But you're looking at the Spanish flu or the Kansas flu of 1919, and you're looking at 2020, and you're seeing the same playbook. And like you just said, Fauci or whatever is just doing the same thing that he was instructed to do. And all of the numbers that they made up, they just made up things. The 6 foot thing, I covered this and my video got deleted. They just made the number up. They just thought that was a good number, and they just said that's what it is. And then even with the masks, which are now in the ocean, the plastic barriers, which are now in the ocean, all these different things, you start to sit there and think, how does any of this make any sense? And also, too, if the germs were jumping all over, as soon as we popped out the womb, we would have been gone because the germs would have
Right.
got me. We're still here. Natural births are amazing, wives and all these things, beautiful things. But sterile births, not so much in a hospital and things like that. So you see this, and like I said, if we don't understand that, we can't move forward. And that's why I'm really big into, we look into the past, we look at this and go, wow, this chicken flu looks like the swine flu of 1976. The same playbook again.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not aware and we don't see this, we get taken advantage of. And that's my whole thing is I don't like people getting taken advantage of. I like what you have on your shirt, which is health is wealth. That's what my grandma, literally, who's on my arm, said. Health is wealth. It's the only thing that you own. And I think that we need to enforce that, and that needs to be, out there because there's too much of like cushioning of this is okay and that's okay, and it's like, no, look at where we are. We need to make changes, and we need to make it for us and our future generations as well as them.
We need a culture shock because they have gone through dramatic lengths. I mean, they have studied us inside and out to make sure that we are where we are. And in order for us to kind of break free, especially to get to a critical mass where we are actually resisting the system again, we do need a culture shock. And I do think that people such as yourself, myself, we're like kind of the tip of the spear. My goal is to actually show people my journey and practice what I preach. Like earlier today, I was out in my garden. I started gardening back in 20. It might have been 2020 or somewhere around there, and my garden burned up. The sun just burnt it all up. I'm sure that the spraying the atmosphere has something to do with that. But I went back into it last year, the beginning of the growing season last year, and I mean I went hard. I basically went through a process of I wanted to get my soil. I'm trying to get my soil back to like a natural state because it just had grass back there, and it'd been sprayed with pesticides and all that stuff. And the progress that I've made in just one season has been phenomenal. Like I could literally dig anywhere and get a worm. Like I was literally planting. I was planting some seeds yesterday, and I just brushed away a little bit of the soil, and there was a worm right there. This time last year, I probably couldn't find a worm out there. So the nature responds very quickly, kind of like our body responds once we start doing the right things. And one of the things you mentioned is the Amish. They don't have a lot of the issues that we have, but they also grow their own food. I mean, they make stuff from scratch. Like they're not buying all this processed stuff. And I just heard recently that they have like almost no autism in their
Yep.
community as well. And so we got to think because these communities exist. The government's well aware of them. Scientists and people that research these diseases and things, they're well aware of it. They don't go to communities and research healthy people. They only research sick people. Kind of like what you mentioned earlier, they're going to research the food. It's going to be the processed food. It's like we're going to do this study on sugar and the effects of sugar, but it's only going to be like processed sugar. You're not going to get to know the benefit of natural sugar because they're going to lump all of that research together. And when they, whatever angle that they want, they're going to manipulate the data. They did it with 2020, where people were dying from car accidents, but because they had vid, the big C vid, they were getting put on their death certificate COVID. It's just like, that makes no sense. We know that makes no sense, but we are still like buying into this. So I was actually very surprised at, how many people were buying into it. But also, I do think that there is a swelling up of people who are like, wait a minute, this is not making sense. And I personally think that the infrastructure that's in place right now is coming to a close. And I think that they're like doing anything that they can to maintain control and fear. And I feel like they will stop at nothing, to get what they want. I mean, why? Why would they? There's no consequences. So one of the things I came across, because I was researching like sudden infant deaths, and I heard this story of a family that had a newborn, and they had a nursery set up for their child, and the baby died. Right, it just seemed like crazy. It just just died. It didn't make any sense. And then come to find out that um, there was like some type of telecommunication apparatus right on the outside of the home, outside of where the baby was. I don't know if it's where the signal comes in, sends and receives. Like, have you done any research around like SIDS and how maybe like the radio frequencies have impacted, SIDS?
Oh yeah, so this goes back to that Kansas flu again, 1919. Professionals used to take a stethoscope and put it on a baby, and they could hear the radio through the baby. So they would put a
Wow.
little stethoscope on the chest, and they'd be able to hear the radio. So those radio signals are pulsing, the whole entire time. And like you just said, if that baby was next to a smart meter or whatever it was that was installed nearby, it could definitely mess with the child and cause the baby to drop. Because your heart, think of your heart, they shock you back to life. Like, they actually shock you with electricity back to life. So your heart there's electricity here. So if you mess with that, with these waves, and bring, these waves into your terrain or whatever it may be, they could start messing with your heart. They could mess with your brain, and a baby is really tiny. They're like little potatoes, they're really small. Like, they're not that big. So anything that's like really impacting the terrain could mess with them. And if the baby is also injected with heavy metals, and then these transmitters that are out here are acting like receivers, the baby is acting like a receiver too. I mean, I've done videos with like mercury, and mercury can pick up signals from like miles away. So if you put mercury into a person, they could pick up signals from miles away. So all of these things, you start to see this and go, it's not by chance that the SIDS has just gone through the roof. It's all of these deliberate things that have happened to the child that are experiencing trauma and poisons and toxins, and then that starts to increase. And it's those who say, I'm not doing any of this, I'm not going with it, and I'm not going to buy this new technology, and I'm not going to do all this, and then their kid is healthy. Like, you see this total different change. So that's the thing, is people have to look at the other side and go, do I feel somebody's telling me something? And does that feel correct? Or maybe is there another side I just never heard because that person was silenced? And in that book, The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Fistenberg, he goes through all of these charts. He shows even like the bees and the whales and the dolphins and all these things which are being affected, and how, since the introduction of these new technologies and these new, like you said, upgraded systems, all of a sudden people start having issues. And maybe a person didn't have an issue at like the radio, but then when they rolled out the television, which has been shown to emit X-rays, well, now all of a sudden the kids started having issues. And then as these things get stronger, it's like, then everybody starts having them. So that's why it's so important. And I tell people, because I don't like to, just sit on the fear, is you can hardwire your internet. You can get an Ethernet cord, you can get an adapter, you can plug in, your box and get rid of the Wi-Fi and the guest Wi-Fi. You could hardwire all your devices, like my phone, I plug it in, my computer that I'm on, I plug it in. I don't have to have these frequencies pinging throughout the house. And there are solutions to this. And if a person's living in a place where maybe they're surrounded, by these things, the first option I could say, you could move and say you want to maybe live somewhere else because your health is more important. Or they even have Faraday cage things you can put in your house, So it just depends on the person's circumstances and where they are and what they want to do. But I know personally, and this is what happened to me back in 2019, before 2020 happened, I lived in a building that had towers in the wall. And I started noticing I couldn't sleep. I'd only sleep for like 5 minutes at a time. And I started like losing weight. And I started like not being able to think. I couldn't figure it out. One day I bought a meter and I went around the place I was living, and I found out that on the other side of this wall, there were towers, cell towers installed in there. And I thought,
Wow.
this has got to be illegal. And what was crazy is I actually told the company after I moved out that I was going to sue. And they said, that's fine. We have our attorneys ready. And I thought, wait a minute, this. And the other part that was even more mind-blowing was 3 people passed away in my building in 6 months. And I thought, wait, what?
Wow.
People don't just drop. It's like very rare. They just hear people dying and whatever else. It was an older gentleman.
Right.
It was a gentleman. And then there was like a lady. And I thought, I've only been here for like 5 months. I don't know what's going on, if there's some weird energy or something or whatever. But something is totally off. And it was because they installed it in the walls. And then as you would go up the elevator, they were in the elevators. And I thought, this is the most craziest things ever. But I didn't know until I bought a meter and I started walking around and going, wait a minute, what? This thing's pinging? This thing's pinging? And then I go to find out that the towers are inside the complex. And this goes into if you want to get into Agenda 2030 and 15-minute smart cities, why they want people corralled into cities, because then they're stuck in this, grid of electricity and cell phone towers. So, when people move out, and that's why I tell people, like, move out, get some land. You can find land anywhere, but move out a little bit and see how you feel. Stay out of the city for a little bit and see how you feel. I guarantee you'll be a different person after a week, but, just try it and see. And that's the difference. And when I did that, I realized once I moved out of there, I was like, I'm not having these health issues anymore. And when I went back to Chicago in 2020, because of the whole nonsense was happening, and I want to make sure my mom's okay and everything else, when I went back there, they didn't have that new technology. And I remember I was telling people, they rolled this out in Arizona. It's coming here. And my buddy, whatever. Then all of a sudden, we got to shut you down and and it worked like clockwork. So, if we're not aware of these things and we bring these things into our home and we consent to all of these things, then we don't know what the root cause is and that we're impacting our health. So that book, The Invisible Rainbow, highly recommend. It's 500 pages long and it's got like 5,000 studies that are not told to us on these things, because how could you sell technology if you knew that it came with all these side effects? Can't. Because people will be like, wait a minute, I don't want ringing of the ears. I don't want this and whatever else. I don't know. What do you mean? But if you don't tell people, and then you don't tell them that they can't sue you for damages, well, then they'll buy it. And the most mind-blowing, the last part on this topic was the most mind-blowing thing was that these devices, when they tell you that they're safe, they tested them on a plastic dummy with water in it. That's how they tell you that they're safe. They put the phone up to a plastic dummy. So, you got to think about what they're thinking about you, like, dummy, like doing that, but a plastic dummy with water. And they're like, yeah, it didn't affect the dummy. Yeah, no obviously, because it's a dummy. But that's how these studies determine that it's safe. So you sit there and go, wait, what? I didn't know that. And then, so what side effects? And during 2020, there were people who testified, the telecommunication companies testified in front of Congress. And the Congress asked, what are the long-term studies? And the telecommunication guy at that time, I'll never forget the video, he's like, we haven't done any. And he's like, so you're rolling out something new, but you haven't tested it. He's like, yeah, but until somebody asks us to test it, then we will. And I sat there and thought, oh, okay, I got you. We're the long-term experiment, is what it is. And that's what people have to be aware of with all the smartphones, smart watches, AirPods, and all the other nonsense they try to sell you.
Yeah, it's interesting how they, especially when it comes to when you're dealing in the world of legality, right? We're talking about like law terms versus everyday terms. It's so difficult to understand what they're talking about when you're listening to, court cases, attorneys and judges and things of that nature, because you think they're saying one thing because you understand the words, like those words, the definitions, but they're using completely different definitions. And that's why I think they're able to get away with so much nonsense, because we don't know the law. And one of the things that I studied was like I got into a spot where I was, studying like credit repair. So I'm looking at the code that Congress put together, and there's so much in the USC code that is there to protect us, but we don't even we don't know it's there. Number one, we don't understand the language. So we, like, when we go to sue these companies, or we go to, try to get something changed or something done, because we're immersed in this corporation, this United States corporation, and we don't understand our title and our role and how things are, how things actually get done. It's like we're just spinning our wheels. So we just kind of throw our hands up and we give up. And it's, for me, and I think, one of the things that you've kind of shown through your actions is, it's like we have to be willing to just take this thing into our own hands, because there are some very simplistic ways that we can combat this. And I think I heard you talk about this earlier. Isn't this one of the reasons why they got rid of lead paint? Because the lead paint would help to kind of,
yeah. I mean, that was definitely a big one. And it's interesting too, because they still have lead gasoline in airplanes. It's still sold today. You could go out there and fly your airplane with lead gasoline. So it's interesting. It's only dangerous to protect your house with. That's what it's dangerous with. They told us that children were eating these paint chips. That was the whole thing, that children were going out of their way and eating paint chips. I don't know any child eating paint chips, but children were going out of their way and whatever. But it's interesting because the lead paint ban also happened at the same time of the first cell phone rolling out. 1971, the first cell phone rolls out. 1970s, all of a sudden the lead paint's gone. So you start to see how certain things are gone and removed at a time in which something new is released. And there's all these paints they've came out with that you can use in your house, to use as a Faraday cage. If people are putting windows in their house, they should make sure that they're made out of metal, that they're always made out of metal, not plastics. They do a lot of the plastics and things. Make sure it's all metal. It'll actually work as a Faraday cage. The metal screen in your window will actually work like a Faraday cage. So there are ways, but once again, if you don't know, then you think, oh, that's why they banned it. And if you look at the things, if you look at the track record of the people who are trying to save us and protect us, you can see that they don't really care about like the fluoride, the toxins, the pesticides, all the things that are actually harming the people. But the lead paint is one of the ones that they're sad about. Right. And they also put the lead into the gasoline so that it made it toxic as well. Like that's where the whole unleaded versus leaded came from. Like they understood that. So you could see this and go, okay, if you have all these radio frequencies, you got this stuff blasting all the time, well, what's the solution? You put the paint on the house. And it's interesting because now there's videos. This happened. I put up this video and it went nuts on lead paint. And now there's people trying to debunk it. And it's interesting because it's like, where did these people come from? Number one, because it only happens when you talk. And number two, all of a sudden, they're out there and they're like, yeah, it's not doing it. It's like you're standing in front of a cell phone tower. Of course, it's pulsing through everything. It's literally penetrating whatever. But the best was this guy had a box. He has like a box like this, and it's open, and he's got the tester in there. And he's like, yeah, it's not doing anything. And people were commenting, close the box. Like, obviously, like, like, hello, so if you look at these things, when things come out, and I've noticed this, I've been censored for it a billion times, but when things come out, all of a sudden, all these other people came out. And it's interesting because this relates to these walks they do, in February, or I think it's February, October, whatever it is. They have like these walks, and it's like walks for the solution, and they get all these people together. Well, in the book I was just reading, they were talking about how they were paid actors. So like, you think you're walking with people for the solution when you're walking with these people, and then you find out they're all actors to get you to donate. So you don't even know. This kind of takes it to like NPCs and all people in the realm who we don't even know exist. But all of a sudden, like the Truman Show, where all the people start appearing when he starts driving, you start to sit there and think, well, then who am I standing next to? Like, we're all walking and whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, are these people, where'd they come from? And who are you? And I'm here for this. So now it really starts to make you question, okay, if they can fake that, because that's been faked for a long time, they've done these walks for a long time, what else can they fake? And this is where it's really made me question, like I said, anytime they're trying to get rid of something, ban something or whatever, what's your true intention of banning it? Because you don't ban all the other stuff. You don't ban the pesticides and toxins and all this, but you're banning that. And why would you ban that specifically? And as I went through a lot of the things in the past, I noticed that only selected things are banned. And even like radium, you get into radium, how they were healing people. You could, if a person was blind and you put a radium vial next to their eye, they could see again. And that's because they're getting the sun energy from the radium. So once again, better stay away from that one. And you start to see that all these things are these, you need to stay away. But in reality, it's because it brings you and uplifts you and brings you to a point in which you're protected, you're independent, and you have your freedom. That's pretty much what it is.
Wow. Man, yeah, I think I did see one of your videos talking about radium, and that's the green glass, like when you use the light, the black light, you can see it glow?
Yes, so that's the baseline glass, that's uranium-based glass, and this is another rabbit hole for people to look into, depression glass. They were creating all this glass with uranium, with cobalt, all these things that are highly conductive. And you think about your body, like when you wear materials, like all your jewels and things that you're wearing, you're amplifying the meridian pathways or the conductivity of your body. People used to be all kinds of things from every type of jewel, every type of thing. You see all these places all over the world. They got necklaces and brass and copper and gold and silver and whatever. They're amplifying the conductivity of the body. So if you think about a glass that has been imprinted with something that has a high conductivity, what's going to do for you? It's going to start to heal the body. And you start to look at all these like 1910s, 1920s, you see all these like radium water bottles, which is interesting. And all of a sudden, all these studies started coming out. Don't touch those, whatever else. And if you start to think about it, if a person could heal with something that's just a simple glass, drinking out of copper, just something simple, well, that doesn't make money. So then all of a sudden, you start seeing advertisements come out, and all these advertisements, and it kind of goes back against it. So, when you wear things, when you're, whatever you're putting on your body, your clothes, all of these things, they all have a resonance. They all have a frequency. So when you get into this whole like depression glass 1929, you see them imprinting all these things into glass, and then you start to sit there and think, okay, well, my body's water. So if you imprint something into this glass, my body's going to take that on. And you think of like old stained glass windows. They used to walk into the cathedrals of these stained glass windows, and they noticed that the water of their body would take on the same symmetry or fractal of the stained glass window. So somebody understood how things of just color, all reds, blues, greens, yellows, purples, all these things are all transmuting the water in our body, the resonance of these things. And when I got into the whole radium rabbit hole, it's just another thing of why it was kind of, it was told to stay away. And also because with radium, you can make helium. And with helium, you could float. We could all go floating around on a blimp and do things like that. They need us on the ground. Because once we're on the ground, we're in full control. But when we're up in the air, you can see things differently and go, yeah, that that doesn't make much sense. But when you're on the ground, you believe, the Operation Mockingbird or whatever story that they're trying to tell you.
Man, you are just a wealth of knowledge, man. It's incredible. I definitely want to be respectful of your time. I appreciate the time that you spent with us. I would love to have you come back. I mean, it's so much more deep we could go, but I think this will give people an opportunity to kind of go out, start doing some of their own research, dig into some of the things. I love how you are able to provide resources for people, because like that's the big thing nowadays. It's like, what he's saying is not real, because if it was real, our scientists, our PhDs would already know it. And so therefore it must be fake. And it's like, no, just go look for yourself. Be willing to maybe do a little personal experimentation. I'm very big on, especially because a lot of the suggestions they're harmless. It's like, go outside barefoot, and then think about how that's making you feel. Maybe document how that makes you feel. Check your pressures. See if it has an impact positively or negatively. You know what I mean? So it's been incredible. I want to give you an opportunity to just share how people can reach you, how they can get in touch, the different platforms that you have available so that people can kind of tap in.
So they can find us on cultivateelevate.com. We have a Telegram that's Cultivate Elevate. I tell everybody to come over there because these platforms they're goofy, basically. There's a lot of censorship. But Telegram, Cultivate Elevate, Instagram as well. Used to be on TikTok, but they banned me on there. Now I'm on Twitter, and I put a Cultivate Elevate on there. And then also I have longer formats like our talk today, which will go up on YouTube and Rumble. And I put them up on both of there as well, too. But like you said, I try to give you as many resources, and I try to keep it simple. Because I think we have overcomplicated things so much that it's like, I know you do a lot of stuff on fasting. I saw your page, and it's like, it's simple. It's abstaining from what you're doing. Like, it's very simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just abstain. Like that's it. Like just take a break, So
yeah.
If we keep it simple, it makes it easy. And I think that's how we have to see these things. And like you said, where people will maybe think, well, if this existed, why isn't it around today? Well, there's lots of money that has been put forward to keep this from the people. You think of all these times, like people had a newspaper and a radio, that's the only source of information they got. And if they didn't talk to their friends and family, in one city, they didn't talk to somebody else in maybe another. So they could be easily manipulated, that's for sure. So if a technology was released, like we just talked about, like, for example, the 1902 solar panel, the first ever solar panel that was created in Los Angeles, if people don't live in Los Angeles, they don't know this technology exists. But then in 20 whatever, when they roll it out, they're like, oh, this is new. No. This has been around since 1902. So I like to cite as many sources, and if people need books, I try to put as many books out there and just show them, I'm not going to hide the information. I want people to research and learn, and I want people to do the research, because when you do it and you start to just have a click, like when I was reading this book and the other books, you just have a click and you go, oh my, wow, I was duped. And we have to admit that, because if we don't admit that, then we're sitting here like we know everything, and we don't. We know nothing, actually. I've realized we know a drip in the bucket. But, it's important to kind of take that down and say, okay, let me see it from a different angle. Let me try it. Let me test it and go from there. And if it doesn't work, I could try it again. That's the beauty of things. That's how we do science. But, that doesn't happen anymore. So thank you for having me on. It was a blast. And yes, everybody can find us, Cultivate Elevate, with all the information.
All right. Well, hey, if you guys like this video, I want you to hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe. And as always, the application of knowledge is power. And I will see you guys next time.